And just like that, Cowboys Nation, the Dallas Cowboys have officially parted ways with head coach Mike McCarthy. After 5 seasons with Mike at the helm, the Cowboys officially decide to move on and look forward as Mike McCarthy does the same thing as well. Well, it's another milestone here in the Jerry Jones era. Mike McCarthy is out. I will first start off by saying I had predicted that Mike was going to return. I thought it would have made sense for him to return, and you guys can see this in the previous videos. How I feel about Mike is I think he's a great Monday to Saturday head coach. He's great at getting your organization right back on course. He's great at creating consistency. And if you look at the 5 seasons that he was in Dallas, first season, you go 6-10, but Dak Prescott has the gruesome injury against the Giants. Therefore, Andy Dalton takes care of the rest of the season. I was very impressed that we were able to win some of the games that we did and end up at a 6-10 record. But first season, you don't bat an eye because you are invested in this head coach. Then for the next 3 seasons, we see Mike McCarthy do something that, frankly, we haven't seen since Jimmy Johnson. You can probably throw Barry Switzer in that conversation, but what I'm talking about is a winning culture in Dallas. 3 straight seasons, 12-win seasons, 2 of those being years that the Cowboys were division champs of the NFC East. Impressive. That is something we had longed for, something that we wanted as Cowboys Nation, for this team to consistently be in playoff contention. And that was one of my things going into that first year with Mike McCarthy. I wanted to see this team compete year in and year out in the postseason. It's just something we never got with Jason Garrett. If we're talking about consistency, Jason Garrett was consistently mediocre, literally, statistically, mathematically, 8-8 for so many seasons. But if you look at Mike McCarthy, when he has had a starting quarterback, when he's had Dak Prescott at helm and leading the team, 3 straight seasons, 12-win seasons. Now, obviously, when you look into those seasons, very disappointing. The playoff record. Look, when I look back, you got to look back at that press conference. Everyone at that press conference when Mike McCarthy was hired, Steven, Jerry, and Mike, they were all on the same page. No one was talking about playoff success. No one was talking about division titles. The main thing was Mike is here to help us win a Super Bowl. He's done it before. He's done it at AT&T Stadium with the Packers when they beat the Steelers. That is the main reason he is here. That was said at the press conference when Mike McCarthy was hired. And if you look at the realistic, unbiased record that Mike had, he did his job in the sense that he got us in a position that we never been to. When you get to the playoffs, it's a whole new season. You want a chance. That's why the underdogs win sometimes. That's why the favorites get upset. That's the playoffs. So that was step 1, is getting us there. And we played 4 games in the playoffs, and we went 1-3. It is very disappointing to sit back and finally look back and realize that the only win under the Mike McCarthy era was a wild card win on the road when we beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who weren't as good as they were previous seasons, even though we were playing Tom Brady, a quarterback who had beat the Cowboys his entire career except that one game. And the Buccaneers weren't really much of a competition. They were just a unanimous decision because they won the NFC South. When you look at those other 3 losses, the first one against San Francisco in the wild card round was incredibly disappointing. I mean, that is a good Cowboys roster that could have very well won that game, and we lost 23-17. That was a very disappointing one, but you don't move away just yet because you're in year 2. So, year 3, you're up against the 49ers again. You get a playoff win for the first time in your 10 years as a Dallas Cowboys head coach, and you lose in a tight one, 19-12. I mean, you look back at that game, there were many opportunities where the Cowboys could have won that game. But offensively, Dak Prescott falls short. Kellen Moore, we'll talk about him here in a little bit. Kellen Moore, very predictable on offense, doesn't give this team a chance. And then, obviously, there's a common denominator in all this, Dan Quinn. The 3 seasons that the Cowboys went 12-plus wins, you had Dan Quinn as your defensive coordinator, and you had Dak Prescott as your starting quarterback. Then we get to the abysmal playoff performance, and what I still think we were such a good team last year. It was kind of the first time that the Cowboys front office went all in. They got Brandon Cooks, they got Stephon Gilmore, they went out, assembled a really good team, and they got embarrassed. And then you have this year 7-10, despite and like I said throughout the year, despite losing Dak, what they were able to achieve and win the amount of games that they did was still pretty impressive. I have been on the record that I think Mike McCarthy, like I said, great Monday through Saturday head coach. He's great to establish the culture in the room. He just needs help. And I think you need a good defensive coordinator, which Jerry did. They got him Dan Quinn for 3 seasons. But we never just got the same caliber of an offensive coordinator as we did with Dan Quinn. And when I'm talking about that, Dan Quinn's a former head coach, has had success as a defensive coordinator going back to the Legion of Boom days with the Seattle Seahawks. We just never got that same amount of caliber or resume with the offensive coordinator position. We went with Kellen Moore. You guys know how I feel about Kellen Moore. I think has and always will be a terrible decision. I will say that this past year, I feel like the Cowboys did not, and I'm talking about the front office, I don't think the front office set Mike up for the best success. And we kind of knew that going into this season. But at the end of the day, you bring Mike back, or you bring Mike in to coach the Dallas Cowboys because you want to win a Super Bowl. I mean, heck, man, not even win a Super Bowl, at least compete for one, be in the game, go to the NFC Championship. And, in the times where he has had that opportunity, and, I'm looking at the 1912 game, I think that was a great opportunity to beat the 49ers. The year before that in the wild card, another great opportunity, another great team. I think Mike was given a good amount of opportunities, and sometimes, it's not all on the coaches, right? It's the players sometimes. And I think it's just a healthy fact to say that this ran its course. And if we spent 10 years invested in Jason Garrett and he got us nowhere, I think this is a healthy split to go to the end of your contract. You gave it your best shot. You gave it 5 years, and it didn't amount to anywhere other than one playoff win. Let's move on. Thank each other, shake hands, and move on. I like Mike. I wish nothing but the best for Mike. I think he's going to have a great career in the NFL. He's going to continue to find great success. I don't know if he'll ever win another Super Bowl. I think this might actually have been his best chance if he ever wanted to win another Super Bowl with another team. But that's all I'll say about that. Now, when we talk about the current events of today, what happened? I'm going to give it to you unbiased and realistically. I'm going to tell you exactly what happened, and I don't think this is what everyone's making it out to be. I think common consensus between Cowboys Nation is saying, oh my gosh, Jerry Jones is putting his foot down. We got rid of Mike McCarthy. This is Jerry putting his foot down, saying, look, we are the Dallas Cowboys. We have a standard. We have to win playoff games. That is not the case at all. And when I look at this decision and when I look at the way that it all unfolded, I don't see that one bit. I'm not fooled. I have zero faith in Jerry Jones to be able to find someone as good as Mike McCarthy, if not better. So I'll tell you what I think happened. And this is through different facts and different things, different reports and updates that we received throughout the few hours. I believe a week ago, Jerry Jones was presenting this idea of an incentive-based contract, meaning if you win this, if you do this, you will earn a good contract. And the Cowboys are notorious for this with their players, and a lot of players don't like this contract. That's why they end up going elsewhere. And Mike McCarthy, compared to the rest of the league, I mean, you got top head coaches getting paid $20 million. You got Andy Reid, you got Sean McVay, you got Kyle Shanahan, who are making well above $10 million, $15 million, up to $20 million. Mike McCarthy is making $4 million, $5 million. So the Joneses are still being cheap. They are still being penny pinchers when it comes to coaching staff. And we all know how they do their business with salary caps and the players. But they're now bringing this philosophy and applying it to the coaching staff. And I believe that they were in discussion, and Jerry presented this idea, and Mike was offended. And I think as he should have been, because Jerry said, look, here's an incentive-based contract. They probably wanted a shorter contract. Mike probably wanted a longer contract, saying, look where you guys were before I came here. Look where you guys are now. You're in a better spot because we've won 2 division titles, 3 straight seasons of 12-plus wins when I have my healthy starting quarterback, and the Joneses just didn't want to do that. And so why do I say that happened that way? Well, if you don't like your head coach, and if you're not happy with the way the season happened, you make a decision the day after you've played your game on Sunday. You know it. As a GM, as an owner, you have that decision in your head. If you want to move forward, if you want to flip the page, you have that decision Monday after the Sunday you played the Washington Commanders. But Jerry and Steven let this thing, they let it drag out. And I'm not even convinced anymore that they do it for media purposes, to stay in the spotlight, to stay in the media. I honestly think this is just who they are. They're just incompetent of running this organization. Because if you make that decision, Mike is fired Monday, and you start your head coaching search the next day. You get an interview with Ben Johnson. You get an interview with Aaron Glenn. You get an interview and you get a leg up on the next season, because this has to be fast. The new season has started, and you have to have your head coach, because he's got to look at the draft. He's got to look at the offseason. A new head coach means new culture, new offense, new defense. And they just weren't ready for that. The Joneses did not have that decision, and they were caught with their pants down, because they thought, like they think with all of their players, they think that they're going to take a hometown discount. And surprise, surprise, when the player doesn't want to do that, they leave. Same thing in this situation where they were hoping Mike to take a hometown discount. He didn't. And that's what ended up being the final decision, is they amicably split. And now the Joneses are like, I thought he was going to say yes. I thought we were going to keep this going, but apparently not. So now we're going to part ways. And now we don't get the front interviews that we maybe wanted to have if we knew Mike wasn't going to be here. And that's why we had the long pause and delays, and the reason why the Joneses didn't respond to the Bears' request to interview Mike at first, but then they declined it. It's just a mess, and nothing from these events gives me any sort of faith or hope or confidence in this organization now to make the best decision for this football team going into next season. I have no faith in Jerry Jones making the competent decision for who's going to be the next coach for the Dallas Cowboys. You are already late to the game. The season should have started two weeks ago for you guys, and we're making this decision now. And if you were serious about winning, if you're serious about competing, you would have known this 2 weeks ago and not now. And it's frustrating. And now moving forward, right? Let me close this by just saying I want to thank Mike McCarthy. I think he's a great guy. I really like what he did in Dallas. Obviously, the results were very disappointing. We didn't get to a championship game. We didn't get to the Super Bowl. I would have wanted Mike back, and I know I'm in the lower percentile when it comes to that, but that's my opinion on Mike. Thank you for a great 5 years. And I just be careful what you ask for. And Cowboy fans are in a tough state where the 28 years is piling up and the urgency is there. And to know that we were so close for 3 straight seasons, it has put Cowboys Nation in this mental state where they think that if it's not working, that person should leave. And personally, again, I think Mike should have been back. But be careful what you ask for all the people who wanted Mike gone. You treated Mike like Jason Garrett. And they're just not the same. Mike McCarthy is not Jason Garrett. Mike McCarthy is leaps and bounds better than Jason Garrett. And just because both of them didn't make it to the Super Bowl doesn't mean they're the same caliber of coach. There's levels here. There's tiers here. So for fans who want Mike gone, be careful what you ask for, because I believe the dog days are coming. I believe the dog days are coming. And like I said, I have no faith. I just don't see the hope next season, which is super frustrating because you got Dak, CeeDee Lamb, Micah, some of the best players at their positions in the National Football League. And we're in this weird state where we should be in a win now situation with players like these, but on paper, with the salary and with the contracts, the Joneses are trying to push for a rebuild. That's why you got the soft season that you did this past season where they were 7-10. So now that complex idea where they want to rebuild, they want to keep into account the salary cap, but they also want to win now because they just signed Dak and they just signed CD and they're about to re-sign Micah Parsons. What kind of coach do you bring in? Do you bring in a first-year head coach who's going to rebuild? Do you bring in an established head coach who you think can do both and maybe put an emphasis on winning now? There's just no clear vision, and it's all dysfunction in Dallas again. And I'm going to run through a couple of names here. My wish list for the Dallas Cowboys, who I think would just kill it and be great, I think is Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson would be a great, and I'm going to write this down as I speak, Ben Johnson gives the offensive push that we need, but I'm not going to spend too much time on this because that will never happen. This Ben Johnson wants a lot of money. Jerry Jones is not going to pay that. So I just want to get that out of the way. That is the wish list. That is on top of my list. Now, who do I think might actually be a good fit? And listen to everything I say. Who do I think would be a good fit of keeping the continuity of the situation, of keeping that win now mentality, also building up these younger guys and drafting well? Who do I personally believe keeps the Cowboys in that? Because I don't want to go back to the 5-11 days. I don't want to go back to the losing 8-8 days. I want to remain in competition. I think Mike did a great job of that, of when he had all of his players that were healthy, we were playing and we were in contention. This might be a wild card to y'all, but I think Mike Tomlin is the guy to keep the train going. That is who I would like to see if we are still trying to win now. If we're trying to squeeze everything we can out of Dak, CD, Micah, and build around them, Mike is that guy, Mike Tomlin. I know there's a lot of people reacting to that right now, but that's who I would put in that situation. Again, these are different categories. Wish list, Ben Johnson, we're not going to get him. Mike Tomlin probably would never happen. Now, if we're just having fun, if this is going down the drain the way I think it is and the way the dog days are coming, who do I want to throw into the mix of that? Stuff hits the fan. Let's have fun. Who cares? We're not winning a Super Bowl anytime soon. Who do I want to throw into that mix? I want to throw in Deion Sanders. I don't know if Deion would be successful in the NFL, and I don't know if he would want to coach in the NFL. I don't know how that situation works out with his sons, but I think if we're having fun, if we want to sell tickets, if we want to do all that jazz, then I think Deion Sanders is the way to go. And again, I don't think that would ever happen, but I'm giving you guys different categories here. Last but not least, well, there's two more categories here. What is the worst case scenario? What is the one that will just there's a lot of ways they can go, but what is the worst thing that the Cowboys could do that would just honestly make me not want to watch them? It would be, in fact, bringing back Kellen Moore. I can't emphasize how terrible this has all been. He's been a backup to the quarterback, didn't have a great NFL career. Okay, they brought him as a quarterback's coach. Dak did not have his best year when Kellen Moore was a quarterback's coach. But somehow, some way, he's promoted to offensive coordinator. This offense struggled a lot of times to run the football. They had no consistency under Kellen Moore, so that we let him go. The Chargers thought the same thing, so they let him go. Bringing Kellen Moore would be a travesty. It would not work out. it would be a terrible decision by this organization and would make zero sense. Now, I gave you 4 different categories. I gave you my wish list. I gave you who I think would be best for a win now scenario. I gave you a fun one. I gave you the one I never want to see. Now, the ultimate question. Who do I believe is going to be the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys? Look, Jerry probably wants an older guy, someone who's established, someone who's been a coach in the NFL. We've known that he doesn't like the younger guys. We're not going to go college here. So I think, unbiased and realistically, the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys is probably going to be Kellen Moore. Look, I gave you 4 different categories, and I gave you my unbiased and realistic take that I think that's actually who they will be looking at. I think Kellen Moore is inexpensive enough to fall under that $5 million range that the Cowboys are willing to pay a coach, and they're hard on that. They're not gonna waver on that. They're probably thinking Kellen has had a successful season with the Eagles, and he's won a playoff game, so therefore he's going to bring that. And in Jerry's mind, he's probably thinking, look, these former players work out really well all the time as head coaches. They're going to point towards the Dan Campbell situation. They're going to say that's going to be a good move for us. They're going to want they're thinking in their minds, a young, innovative offensive coordinator. You know, our fans wanted Ben Johnson, but we got Kellen Moore at home. And they're going to go with Kellen Moore. Which doesn't bode well for me because I think that would be the absolute worst decision for the Cowboys. But I realistically feel like that is probably where we're heading, and it's just disappointing. So back to what I said. I have zero faith. I have zero hope in this front office to make the right decisions and to seriously contend, and I think we're here. These are the dog days. I think this organization, this franchise is dysfunctional. I think they're confused. I don't think they have a true leader right now, and they're everywhere. And to bring in a head coach that's going to fix all of that and bring us our hopes and ambitions that we want, which is an NFC Championship game, a Super Bowl win, it's just asking too much. And Mike McCarthy's fired today, and look, there's a lot of ways you can go with that, but he is gone, and the Cowboys have to somehow rebuild with their salary implications and win now with the contracts that they have with Dak and CD and who they're about to re-sign with Micah. And Jerry Jones is still on the top of it all with his little henchman, Stephen Jones, still right next to him, telling him, Daddy, you can't spend this much. I can't give you $1, so I'm going to give you $0.25. That's all I got to say about that. Long video, but it was a lot to talk about. And, of course, I'll be here all off season long to discuss it. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. And let me know down below, how do you feel about this move? Comment down below. I'll see you next time. Go Cowboys.